My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and I live in a small town in Ohio with my husband, Michael Carter. We had been married for 4 happy years before our beautiful baby girl was born. I believed we had a simple but happy life. Michael worked as an accountant. I worked as an elementary school teacher before I took maternity leave. We were not rich, but we had enough. We laughed together, cooked dinner together, and dreamed about becoming parents. When I became pregnant, Michael cried tears of joy. He held my hands and said, "Emily, I can't wait to meet our baby." Those words stayed in my heart for many months. But there was one person who never seemed happy for me. My mother-in-law, Linda Carter. Linda always found something to criticize. If I cooked dinner, she said it needed more salt. If I cleaned the house, she found dust on the shelves. If I bought new clothes, she said I spent too much money. Sometimes she smiled, but her smile never reached her eyes. I tried my best to respect her because she was Michael's mother. I told myself, she will accept me one day. I was wrong. The day our daughter was born should have been the happiest day of my life. After 16 long hours of labor, I finally heard my baby's first cry. The nurse placed her in my arms. She was tiny. Her little fingers wrapped around mine. I cried because I had never felt so much love before. "Hello, sweetheart," I whispered. "I'm your mommy." Michael kissed my forehead. "She's perfect," he said with a smile. For one beautiful moment, everything felt right. 2 days later, Linda came to the hospital. She walked into the room carrying flowers. I smiled. "Thank you for coming." She barely looked at me. Instead, she stared at my daughter for a long time. Her face slowly changed. She frowned. Then she looked at Michael. "She doesn't look like you." The room became silent. Michael laughed a little. "Mom, she's only 2 days old." Linda crossed her arms. "I know what I see." I felt uncomfortable. "Babies change as they grow," I said softly. Linda ignored me. She leaned closer to the baby. "Her hair is darker than yours." Michael shrugged. "So what?" "And her nose." She stopped talking. I looked down at my daughter. She was sleeping peacefully. She had done nothing wrong. Why was Linda judging her? Before leaving, Linda said something that made my heart race. "I hope this family never has a reason to ask difficult questions." I did not understand what she meant, but her words stayed with me. When we returned home a few days later, life became busy. Our daughter, Grace, woke up every few hours. I barely slept. Some days I forgot to eat. I was tired all the time, but every time Grace smiled in her sleep, I felt stronger. Michael tried to help when he could. He changed diapers. He rocked Grace to sleep. He made coffee for me every morning. I believed we were becoming a stronger family. Then Linda started visiting almost every day. At first, I thought she wanted to help. Instead, she watched everything. She looked at Grace's eyes. She looked at her ears. She compared old family photos with our baby. It felt strange. One afternoon, I found Linda standing beside Grace's crib. She was holding an old picture of Michael when he was a baby. She looked at the photo. Then she looked at Grace, again and again. "What are you doing?" I asked. She smiled, but it felt cold. "Just comparing." "Comparing what?" She folded the picture carefully. "Family features." I forced a small smile. "Every baby is different." "Not this different." She walked away before I could answer. That night, I told Michael about it. "I think your mom is acting strangely." He sighed. "You know how Mom is." "But she keeps saying Grace doesn't look like you." Michael kissed my forehead. "Don't worry, she's old-fashioned." I wanted to believe him, I really did. But something inside me whispered that this was only the beginning. 3 weeks later, Linda invited us to Sunday dinner. The whole Carter family was there. Everyone wanted to hold baby Grace. Everyone smiled. Everyone laughed. For a moment, I finally relaxed. Then, Linda stood up from her chair. She looked around the room. Finally, her eyes stopped on me. She took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about something," she said. The room became quiet. "I believe this family needs a DNA test." The spoon slipped from my hand and hit the floor. No one spoke. I couldn't breathe. I looked at Michael, hoping he would tell his mother to stop. Instead, he stayed completely silent. The room was so quiet that I could hear the clock on the kitchen wall. Tick, tick, tick. Everyone stared at me. I felt my face become hot. I looked at my husband. "Michael, say something." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Linda folded her arms. "I'm only asking for the truth." I stood up slowly. "The truth?" I repeated. "Yes," she said without shame. "Grace doesn't look like my son." My hands started shaking. "So you think I cheated on Michael?" Linda did not answer. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. Michael's older sister, Rachel, finally spoke. "Mom, that's enough." But Linda continued. "I have seen many babies in my life. I know our family. This child doesn't have Carter features." I looked around the table. Some relatives looked embarrassed. Others looked down at their plates. No one defended me. The pain was almost too much to carry. I picked up Grace from her baby seat. She was sleeping peacefully, unaware that her own grandmother was questioning her place in the family. "I think we should leave," I said quietly. Michael nodded. We drove home in complete silence. I held Grace in the back seat. I watched the lights pass through the window. My heart felt heavier with every mile. When we arrived home, I finally asked the question that had been burning inside me. "Do you believe your mother?" Michael rubbed his face. "I don't know." Those 3 words broke something inside me. "You don't know?" I whispered. "I'm just confused." "Confused about what?" He looked away. "Grace really doesn't look much like me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You were in the delivery room." "Yes." "You know, I've never lied to you." "I know." "You know I've never been with another man." "I know." "Then why are you confused?" Michael sat down on the couch. "My mom has been talking about this for weeks." I stared at him. Weeks! He lowered his head. I didn't want to upset you. So she has been telling you that I cheated, and you never told me? He stayed silent. The silence hurt more than any answer. Tears filled my eyes. I just gave birth to our daughter. I know. I haven't slept more than 3 hours at a time. I know. I've been trying to be a good wife and a good mother. I know. And while I was doing all that, your mother was poisoning your mind. Michael covered his face with his hands. I didn't want to believe her. But you did. He didn't answer. That night, I cried after everyone was asleep. I sat beside Grace's crib. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. I touched her tiny hand. I'm so sorry, I whispered. You don't deserve this. A few days later, things became even worse. Linda started calling Michael every day. Sometimes she talked for an hour. Whenever he finished the calls, he became quieter, more distant. One afternoon, I walked into the living room and heard him speaking on the phone. I understand, Mom. He paused. No, I haven't decided yet. Another pause. I'll think about it. When he saw me, he quickly ended the call. I already knew who it was. Was she asking about the DNA test again? He nodded. I felt exhausted. Michael, when will this end? He looked at me with tired eyes. It will end if we just do the test. I couldn't believe those words. So that's your solution? It will prove you're telling the truth. I stared at him for a long moment. You still don't understand. What do you mean? A DNA test doesn't fix broken trust. He looked confused. If a stranger accused me, I could ignore it. If a neighbor accused me, I could laugh. But you're my husband, my best friend, the father of my child. When you ask for a DNA test, you're telling me that my word means nothing. He looked down at the floor. I never wanted to hurt you, but you already have. That night, I called my mother, Susan. The moment she heard my voice, she knew something was wrong. Emily, are you crying? I couldn't stop the tears. I told her everything. She listened quietly. When I finished, she said something I will never forget. A good marriage is built on trust, not fear. If trust is gone, a piece of the marriage is already broken. Her words stayed with me. The next morning, Linda came to our house without calling. She walked inside as if she owned the place. She looked at Grace. Then she looked at me. I've already found a laboratory. My heart became cold. She placed a business card on the kitchen table. They can do the DNA test this Friday. I slowly picked up the card. Then I looked directly into her eyes. My voice was calm, calmer than I felt. You want the DNA test? Linda nodded. Yes. I turned toward Michael. He was standing in the hallway, waiting, watching. I searched his face one last time, hoping to see the husband I had married. Instead, I saw a man who was afraid to stand up for his own wife. A tear rolled down my cheek. Then I took a deep breath. Fine, I said. "I'll do the DNA test." Linda smiled with satisfaction, but she had no idea. I wasn't agreeing because I had something to prove. I was agreeing because, after this test, nothing in our family would ever be the same again. The days before the DNA test felt endless. No one talked much in our house. Michael left early for work and came home late. When we were together, we only spoke about Grace. Did she drink her bottle? Did she sleep well? Does she need a new diaper? We spoke like strangers living in the same house. The love that once filled our home had disappeared. Every night, I looked at my wedding photo on the bedroom wall. I remembered the promises we made. I will always trust you. I will always stand by your side. Those words felt empty now. Friday finally arrived. Michael drove us to the laboratory. The ride was silent. I held Grace close to my chest. She smiled at me, and I smiled back. She had no idea why we were there. Linda was already waiting outside. She looked pleased. "Good," she said. "Everyone is here." I didn't answer. A nurse welcomed us inside. The test was simple. The nurse gently rubbed a cotton swab inside Grace's mouth. Then she collected a sample from Michael. When she turned toward me, she smiled kindly. "This won't hurt." I nodded. A few minutes later, everything was finished. The nurse said the results would be ready in 1 week. 1 week, 7 long days. As we walked toward the parking lot, Linda looked at me. "If you've told the truth, you have nothing to fear." I looked back at her. "I've never been afraid of the truth." She frowned. Maybe she expected me to cry. Maybe she expected me to beg for her trust. I did neither. I simply walked away. The next week was one of the hardest weeks of my life. Some of Michael's relatives stopped calling me. A few friends acted strangely. I could feel people watching me at the grocery store. I began to wonder if Linda had told everyone about the DNA test. The shame was unbearable. One afternoon, I found an old photo album while cleaning the living room. It belonged to Michael's family. I sat on the floor and slowly turned the pages. There were pictures of birthdays, holidays, and family vacations. Then I noticed something. A photo of Michael as a baby. He had very dark hair, almost black. I looked at another picture, the same dark hair. Another picture, still dark. I frowned. Linda had spent weeks saying Grace couldn't be Michael's daughter because of her dark hair. But Michael had dark hair as a baby, too. Why would she ignore that? Something didn't make sense. That evening, I showed the pictures to Michael. He looked surprised. "I forgot my hair used to be this dark." "So did your mother." He stayed quiet. For the first time, I saw doubt on his face. Not doubt about me, doubt about his mother's words. 3 days later, the laboratory called. "The results are ready." My stomach twisted. Michael asked if we could pick them up together. I agreed. When we arrived, Linda was already sitting in the waiting room. I hadn't invited her. Neither had Michael. Yet there she was. The receptionist handed us a sealed envelope. Michael's hands trembled as he opened it. His eyes moved across the page. Suddenly, he stopped breathing. His face turned pale. What does it say? Linda asked quickly. Michael looked at me. Tears filled his eyes. Then he whispered the words I had waited so long to hear. Grace is my daughter. I closed my eyes. A deep breath escaped my lips. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't smiling. I simply felt tired. Very tired. Linda grabbed the paper. She read every line, again and again. This, she whispered. This can't be right. The laboratory employee stepped forward. The results are over 99.99% certain, ma'am. Linda shook her head. There must be a mistake. There is no mistake. The room became silent. Michael slowly turned toward me. I'm so sorry, Emily. His voice broke. I should have trusted you. A tear rolled down my face. I begged you to. He covered his face with his hands. I failed you. Yes, I answered softly. You did. Then something unexpected happened. An older laboratory employee looked at the papers again. She frowned. Excuse me, she said politely. I noticed something unusual. We all looked at her. She hesitated before speaking. Mrs. Carter. She looked at Linda. You seemed very certain that your granddaughter couldn't belong to your son. Linda swallowed hard. The employee continued carefully. In my experience, family members are rarely this confident without another reason. Linda's face lost all color. For the first time since I had known her. She looked frightened. Michael stared at his mother. Mom! His voice was barely above a whisper. What aren't you telling us? Linda opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence in the room suddenly felt much heavier than before. And deep inside, I realized the DNA test had proven much more than my innocence. It had uncovered a secret that Linda had been hiding for many years. The laboratory became completely silent. Everyone was looking at Linda. Michael stepped closer to his mother. Mom, he said quietly, what secret are you hiding? Linda's hands were shaking. I don't know what she's talking about. The laboratory employee smiled politely. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset anyone. It was only an observation. But it was too late. Michael knew his mother was hiding something. He had seen the fear in her eyes. We drove home without saying a word. That evening, Michael asked Linda to come to our house. I want the truth, he said over the phone. An hour later, she arrived. She looked older than she had just a few days before. She sat on the couch and stared at the floor. Michael stood in front of her. Mom, why were you so sure Emily cheated on me? Linda stayed silent. Answer me! Tears slowly filled her eyes. Finally, she whispered, because I was afraid. Afraid of what? She took a deep breath. When your father and I were first married, he had an affair. Michael froze. I found out a year after you were born. He looked confused. What does that have to do with Emily? Linda began crying. I spent my whole marriage wondering if someone else would hurt our family the way your father hurt me. She wiped her eyes. I never trusted anyone again. I listened quietly. For the first time, I saw not an angry woman, but a broken one. Linda looked at me. "I'm sorry, Emily. I let my past become your punishment." I felt sorry for her, but my heart was still hurting. "Your pain explains your actions," I said softly. "It doesn't excuse them." She lowered her head. "I know." Michael sat beside me. His eyes were full of regret. Then he reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold his hand either. He noticed, and he understood. Later that night, after Linda left, Michael and I sat together in the nursery while Grace slept peacefully. He looked at our daughter for a long time. "I almost lost both of you." I nodded. "Yes." He started crying. "I failed as your husband." "You did. I should have protected you. You should have." "I believed fear instead of believing my wife." His voice broke. "I'm ashamed of myself." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I looked at him. "Michael, the DNA test proved that Grace is your daughter." He nodded. "But it didn't prove that you trusted me." He closed his eyes. "I know. That is something no laboratory can ever fix." He cried harder. "I'll spend the rest of my life earning your trust again." I believed he meant every word. But trust is like glass. Once it breaks, it can be repaired. Yet the cracks never completely disappear. Over the next several months, things slowly changed. Michael started going to marriage counseling with me. He learned to speak up instead of staying silent. He stopped letting other people control his decisions. Little by little, we found our way back to each other. It wasn't easy. Some days were still painful, but every step forward was a choice we made together. Linda also changed. She apologized to every family member she had spoken to. She admitted she had been wrong. She even wrote me a long letter. In it, she confessed that fear had controlled her for many years. At the end of the letter, she wrote one sentence that stayed with me forever. "Please don't let my mistakes become Grace's memories." I cried when I read those words. Not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because someone who had refused to admit the truth had finally accepted it. Today, Grace is 4 years old. She has Michael's smile. She has my eyes. And she has a family that has learned an important lesson. Sometimes people carry old wounds for so long that they begin hurting innocent people without realizing it. But pain should never become an excuse to destroy another person's life. When Grace is old enough to understand, I may tell her this story. Not to make her hate her grandmother, not to make her judge her father, but to teach her something far more valuable. Trust is a gift. Once someone gives it to you, protect it with all your heart. Because love cannot survive where trust is always questioned. And I learned that the strongest families are not the ones without mistakes. They are the ones brave enough to admit those mistakes, ask for forgiveness, and choose love before fear. That is the family I pray Grace will always remember.